to Kenya. The conversation that you want to engage me in is a conversation that is very close to my heart. Affordable housing is not just about houses. It's about people. It's about dignity. It's about jobs. It's about careers. It is about business and much more. And you have asked me a fundamental question that how did we move this from manifesto, from documents, from ideas into reality? And I have only one answer. It takes leadership. That's it. And we have had this in our plans as a country in many administrations. We've had it in many manifestos. We've designed how it can be done. But until you find the leadership that has the courage to translate it into reality, it will remain aspiration, it will remain talk, it will remain documents, it will remain campaign promises. And one more thing, you cannot undertake such a fundamental and consequential undertaking if you are focusing on the next election. It has to take a longer-term focus in the next generation. That's what it takes. If you focus in the next election, you will not do it because it is difficult. It requires heavy political capital. It requires mobilizing resources, how to finance it. And that is why today, as I sit here with 270,000 houses being built across the breadth of Kenya, in every large township in the Republic of Kenya, we have 200 active sites in every part of the Republic of Kenya. Yesterday, I was in one of our counties in Olkalau. The affordable housing in Olkalau is ready. In fact, we're going to hand over the keys. CS Alice Wahome has been with me. She has taken me to every place in Kenya because of affordable housing. So let me just say this, that affordable housing will happen if you have the ultimate political leadership. It cannot be done at the ministry. It cannot be done at another level. It has to take the political leadership at the highest level to drive it. Number two, you have to find ways of mobilizing resources. In Kenya, we decided that we are going to mobilize resources locally. The houses we have built in Kenya, maybe ministers sitting here, and I want to say this is a very important forum. We have close to 40 countries represented here at ministerial level because housing is such an important topic for any government because the world is urbanizing. You've just given us the statistics. We have 700 million people today in our continent living in urban settlements. For us in Kenya, we have 7 million people living in informal settlements. We have 1,140 odd informal settlements around the country. And in fact, strangely, a few years ago in Kenya, when visitors used to come to Kenya, I don't know how this happened, that we used to be proud of, okay, take this visitor to go and see the largest slum in our region. You know? So you take your visitor to go and see Kibera, the largest slum in our region, to go and see squalor and poverty and filth, and, you know, which is not the right thing to do. Not to deny that this exists. Yes, it does. But somebody has to do something about it. Today, I can proudly say, when these ministers leave these rooms, they will be taken to see how we are transforming those informal settlements into decent living houses for the people of Kenya. And the houses we have built, we have not borrowed money from the World Bank. We have not borrowed money from anywhere. We built these houses using our own resources. Wow. I bet you, today we have signed $4 billion of housing contracts. That is an equivalent of 650 billion Kenyan shillings. If I were to look for $4 billion from wherever, it would take me maybe 10 years of going to this town and the other town and seeing this person and the other person and signing this paper and signing another one. So I decided that we are going to have a conversation with the people of Kenya. And difficult conversation, that we have a situation, we need to fix it. And as was described by the governor of Nairobi, it wasn't an easy conversation, because change has a price. Unfortunately, status quo has also a price. And always, the price of change is lower than the price of status quo, ultimately. So we had a conversation, difficult, and I must thank our policymakers. When I went to the people of Kenya, I promised that we were going to undertake housing. And we were going to undertake housing because of 4 reasons. I explained myself to the people of Kenya. The people of Kenya trusted me with their vote. When I came to office, I asked my team that we had been elected with, that now it's time to implement what we promised the people of Kenya. And many members of parliament who are my friends told me, Mr. President, we cannot do this. This is difficult. This housing levy is difficult. But I told them, so are you telling me that we told the people of Kenya what we had no intention? In fact, I remember asking some of them who are my friends, I told them, when you had me on the platform telling the people of Kenya, we are going to build houses, their children are going to get jobs, we're going to move them away from slums, what was going on in your mind? How did you think that we are going to do this? And I want to thank our parliamentary group, that when I explained to them that this was not something we are going to bargain with, they agreed with me. They passed the necessary legislation. We went through difficult times, but today we can proudly say as a people and as a nation that we are doing some of the most consequential things. And this is very emotional. Why? You haven't seen the kind of impact that this has on real people. When I went to move the first batch of people who are living in a slum, right here in Nairobi called Mukuru, a place where there is no toilet, a place where there is no road, there is no water, there is no electricity. For you to use the toilet, you have to pay. For them to move from that state to 10th floor of a building that has water, that has piped gas, that has electricity, that has a lift, that has a playground, that has a school, that has a hospital, that has street lighting. You don't know the kind of impact you make to those kind of people. So, this is not just about houses. As I told you, it's about people's careers. In January this year, we brought on board about 6,000 interns. You know, apart from 600,000 people working, who were not working 3 years ago. Architects, engineers, plumbers, quantity surveyors, carpenters, a whole array, realtors, painters, people who have gone to college. We're talking about graduates from our technical training colleges, certificate, people who have a certificate in electrical, in being an electrician, people who have degrees in architecture. These are real people with real careers to pursue. Today they have a chance to pursue their careers. Today, because of the housing program, we have industries that have come on stream. We have people who have been Juakali artisans, small enterprises. Today they are transitioning from being ad hoc. You know, you make one window today, you make another window after 2 months, you make another window after 10 months. Today they have contracts. In fact, we ring-fenced close to 15 billion Kenya shillings for people who were informal. Today, we are formalizing their business. We've had more steel companies come on stream. We've had more cement factories come on board. We've had many more people coming on stream in the space around making construction equipment, making inquiries in transport industry. More transporters are coming on board. So we have built a whole construction industry around housing. What is more, we are slowly rolling back land fragmentation. We are slowly influencing land that was meant for agricultural activity. We are now reserving it for agricultural productivity and food security instead of it being subdivided for informal settlement. So it hasn't taken a person, it has taken a whole Kenyan society, because the executive has been in, Alice and myself and the team. People in the legislature have done their part. The people of Kenya are the biggest contributors to this success. Why? Because they put in their taxes. And we are making the change together. And that is why I am very proud to address this audience and to share our experience as a nation, which I believe is what other countries are doing. Maybe they are doing it differently, but we can share in this experience. Finally, you've asked me, what are the challenges?
Yes.
The challenges have been, the change. Changing a situation is not an easy thing. Mm-hmm. So we've had political pushback. We still have politicians who still think you can make populist, we are going to stop this housing because we are protecting the pay slips of people. Such pedestrian talk. Mm-hmm. How do you cannot see the 640,000 people working. You don't know what to do with them. I know many ministers here are wondering whether there are still people who are opposing this in Kenya. Yes, they are there, and they are not few. There are many. Many politicians still climb to podia to talk about how they want to stop this. How you want to stop such transformation is mind-boggling. Right? Mm-hmm. We still have courts. We've gone through difficult challenges in courts. People who go to court, they want to stop this. In fact, many of them are asking me, who told you we need houses? Others are saying, why are you taking government land, building houses, and then giving it to individuals? The same people don't mind if the same government land, people invade, they settle, it becomes an informal settlement. They don't mind it. But they mind it if we use it and build affordable housing, make decent use of it. Then you ask yourself, those are the kind of challenges we have to deal with. They look mundane, they don't look very intelligent, but they are there. And we have to confront them every day. Sometimes they come from people who you think should know more, I remember telling one of my friends who was opposed to this housing, and I was asking them, my friend, in your house, you possibly have 3 or 4 toilets. One in your bedroom, one somewhere, another one somewhere. There are people who don't have a toilet. They have to pay to use a toilet. That is the conversation we're having. It is as basic as that. So if you don't see the value of a social house or an affordable house, there are people who desperately need it because at the very least, they need a toilet of their own. That's how basic it is. And finally, let me say this. It is about dignity. Yeah. Giving people dignity. Yeah. It is about getting another group of people to own something. Mm-hmm. Today, in a social house, for as less as $30 a month, you become a homeowner. That would not happen under any other circumstance. It would not happen. If we left this to the private sector, the private sector builds for those who can afford, not those who need. Yeah. Government must think about the people who need the houses. And that is why policy becomes central to the delivery of housing. Sorry I've taken long.
No, Mr. President, this is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from His Excellency. This is bold, transformative, and courageous leadership in practice. Mr. President, thank you for bringing the human face to the affordable housing agenda. It's very important for us to see it's not just about housing, as you've said, but it's about dignity, and it's about the people. Mr. President, we have other leaders in the audience that would like to also bring into this conversation and hear from them. My first question I'd like to pose to Her Excellency Anna Claudia Rosbach, UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Habitat. Madam Executive Director, when you talk about the future of Africa, and are governments investing enough in secondary cities as the next frontier for affordable housing, or are we still over-concentrating resources in primary urban centers? Madam Secretary.
Thank you so much. First of all, I really would like to appreciate Mr. Excellency President Ruto for your honesty and transparency. Indeed, housing is complex, and without top leadership, as you said, Minister, it's very difficult to accomplish because there are so many factors involved. But President spoke about the hundreds of millions that are coming to urban settings in Africa. And I spoke about the rural-urban, but also the migration among cities. And our data shows that the growth is actually happening in intermediary city. But if we look at metropolitan areas, the pressure is very, very, very high. At the front line, as you all mentioned, and as we are discussing at this forum, is housing. Because we cannot think about people coming to cities and not having housing. As the President said, the markets are limited. Right now in Africa, I would say 10% is the outreach of the market. Just because the incomes of the people are this low and the prices of the houses are this low. And somebody needs to fix that. So you putting public land into housing helps to cover the gap. You find the finance, and very well highlighted, the domestic finance, because this money is not out there available, is critical to cover this affordability gap. So the city planning, the role of the local authorities, of the mayors, of the governors is critical, because if we don't line up these actions, the money, the regulations, you mentioned a law, you change the law, that comes from the national level, the programs that comes and the planning that comes from the national level, if we don't line up with what's being done at the local level, if the governance, if the mayors, they don't plan for this growth, then it's going to be sustainable. So you need to build the houses, but you need to be conscious that where you build and how you build make a difference. And here I would like to call attention for the densification of the housing program, because indeed, we cannot continue urban sprawl. This is affecting food security. This is affecting our natural resources. So this is also, you mentioned, Mr. President, about a social pact that you did with the Society of Kenya, but this needs to be replicated at the local level. Because if you don't agree with the society, how the city is going to grow up and to the side, and for whom, then it's not feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Executive Director, for reinforcing the importance of...
Can you allow me just to backstop what she has said? It is very fundamental that governments at all levels are aligned. I must commend the leadership of Professor Anyang' Nyong'o in the Council of Governors, because it wasn't going to be possible for us to roll out this in a very short time if we didn't have the partnership of our county governments. Today, approvals for houses take the shortest time possible because we have standardized many things, and we have agreed with the county governments that whether it is national government land or county government land, this is land that belongs to the people of Kenya. There are no national government people, there are no county government people, we only have the people of Kenya. And it has been of immense, assistance that we have aligned ourselves, underlined the program with our county governments. And secondly, on the issue of infrastructure, because part of what we put into legislation is that apart from building the houses, water, sewage, roads that make it possible for citizens to access this affordable housing is part of the development of the housing. So that's not just about houses, it's about how those houses are going to be livable. And finally, is densification. She said a very important thing. We started with ground plus 4. We went to ground plus 9. We realized that was not enough. We went to ground plus 24. We are now getting even higher because you cannot continue to have what she called sprawling cities because land is finite. You know, you can only have so much land. But populations are increasing. You need more land to produce food and less land for housing. So you need to go vertical. And I think that is what we have learned in the short time we were here. I remember with my team, led by Alice and my good friend Charles, we had to rethink and redesign the whole thing because we realized that it wasn't tenable for us to do ground plus 4 for especially big cities because land is finite and it's expensive.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And now that you're talking about county governments, recently we witnessed the signing of a new partnership agreement between the national government and the Nairobi City County government. This is not the first time such an arrangement has been pursued. We previously saw a similar model that led to the establishment of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. This partnership has sparked an important debate. Some argue that such partnerships risk undermining the gains of devolution, while others contend that Nairobi, given its role as the nation's capital, economic hub, and diplomatic center, requires a unique governance approach. Mr. President, what distinguishes this new partnership from the previous arrangements? And most importantly, what tangible outcomes should Kenyans expect to see as a result of this new renewed collaboration?
There's a world of a difference between the partnership under NMS and the partnership we have today with the county government of Nairobi. Mm-hmm. Under the previous arrangement, it was a transfer of functions. We are not undertaking any transfer of functions. We are working in partnership with the Nairobi City County because Nairobi City County is also the capital city of the Republic of Kenya. And the law outrightly states that the Nairobi City County needs to have a special arrangement with the national government because Nairobi City County also is the seat of the government of Kenya. And therefore, we've undertaken this agreement, and for the first time, a president in Kenya is going to address the assembly of a county, and I will be doing it today at 2:30 p.m. Because that partnership is important. We've agreed on the parameters that need to be undertaken, on making sure that the city is clean, on making sure that the city is lit, on making sure that the city is motorable. So we have agreed on which is not the subject of this meeting. We have agreed on what we are going to do with the Nairobi City County. And I am very happy and I'm very proud that we have this agreement. It is not about the president, it's not about the governor, it's about the people of this city, and it's about the capital city of the Republic of Kenya. So that is the agreement we have signed. It is not undermining devolution. In fact, we will be empowering the city of Nairobi to do more and to get it better for the residents and for the Republic of Kenya. Because if Nairobi, many people, these great people who have come here, If they go back home, they will tell you, we went to Kenya. But actually they came to Nairobi. You know, so Nairobi must present the right face of Kenya. So that is what we are trying to achieve.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So yeah, we've heard from His Excellency on bold leadership, courageous leadership to get this big, audacious initiative going. But Mr. President, we also need money to ensure that we deliver at scale. So to respond to this question, I'd like to speak to Mr. Abbas Jar, Practice Manager, Urban Development and Disaster Risk Management, Eastern and Southern Africa at the World Bank. Mr. Jar, policy sets direction, but financing determines whether we arrive. Financing remains critical on both the demand and supply sides. Despite over $400 trillion in global capital, African cities remain underfinanced due to perceived risk, weak project pipelines, and limited creditworthiness. Mortgage penetration remains below 10% in most African countries, largely due to income informality. What is preventing private capital, particularly African capital, from flowing into housing and urban infrastructure? And what would a fully functional housing finance ecosystem look like?
Thank you, Vivian. I think one of the advantages of coming towards the end is that everything that needs to be said has already been said. So I can just pick on the points previous speakers made. I want to begin by really commending His Excellency President Ruto's leadership on housing. And what I really appreciate at a personal level is the way you link housing to jobs and dignity. I think one thing, the Cabinet Secretary made a very good point, which is that cities are not just where jobs are created, it's how jobs are created. And that is something that is really, really important. If you think about cities and towns, they are places where people connect with other people across space and time to create value. And once you start thinking of a city or a town like that, everything else falls in place. And housing is one of the parts of that puzzle. So let me just start with a couple of numbers that are so sobering that it makes you pause. So in the 3 days that we have the Africa Urban Forum, 120,000 Africans will have moved from rural areas to cities. If we don't get this housing part right, 12 million Africans will live in informal settlements in precisely the substandard existence that the President mentioned, with the lack of dignity, with the lack of basic services. So we have to get this right. We cannot afford to not get it right. To come to your question, Vivian, what will it take? I think it will take 3 things. And the President has already mentioned a few of those. First, fix the land, fix the street, fix the sewage and the water before you put the housing in. That is super critical. And we have examples in Kenya, Dandora. We have examples in Angola. We have examples in Cote d'Ivoire of sites and services, which precisely does this. You put in the trunk infrastructure before the housing is built, so that you ensure that the private sector can come in a meaningful way. That's number one. But second is that often we think of the housing finance market as one market. It's actually 5 markets. If you think about it, when you start from the bottom, say the bottom 20%, they cannot afford a mortgage. They'll never be able to afford a mortgage. Then you have to think about things like targeted subsidies, sites and services, things like that. When you look at the middle of the market, there are things like, for example, 70% of housing in Africa is self-financed and incrementally. So people don't build a house at one go, they'll build step by step. So you need to match the finance with that and with their ability to pay. And then at the top of the market, you have the mortgages. And then there are things that you can do to improve the functioning of that market. But always remember that the housing finance market is actually several markets. And you need instruments for each of those markets. And the third point that I would say to get private capital in is something that Anna Claudia also mentioned, is that you need to link transport corridors, density, flood zones. You need to demarcate which parts of the towns and the cities are no-build zones so that the poor don't settle in these hazardous places. And by the way, now high-resolution satellite imagery gives us the ability to pinpoint precisely which are the areas that are going to flood, which should not be built up. I live in Nairobi. I love the city. But we saw flooding last month due to the heavy rains. So there are parts of cities and towns that should not ever be built up. And you can use technology now to do that very cost effective. So I would say these are the 3 things we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abbas. Your Excellency, I would like to come to you on the same topic. So recently, we saw the launch of the National Infrastructure Fund, alongside a number of innovative financing mechanisms, such as the securitization of the fuel levy to support road infrastructure, and the sports levy financing flagship projects like Talanta Stadiums and the many stadiums that you're building across the country. Does this signal a deliberate shift towards more innovative financing models, moving beyond traditional reliance on debt and taxation, both of which have clear limits, we know that? And secondly, with the National Infrastructure Fund now in place, should Kenyans expect to see accelerated investment in critical urban infrastructure, particularly in areas such as clean water and sanitation, drainage and sewer systems, and universal access to electricity?
Thank you very much. Allow me just to mention something that my friend from the World Bank has said, which is fundamental. And we've learned this in the process, that housing market is not one. It's in several, categories. Right at the bottom, we have social housing. These are people who cannot, they are actually the most, they need the houses the most, but they have the least ability. So you have to balance that. They need the houses the most, and yet they have the least ability to own the houses. So this is where, for example, for us as a government, we've done 2 things. Number 1, we are building 20% of all these houses as social houses. We've made it deliberate that we have a category for social houses. Number 2, we have also removed the requirement that you need a deposit to move into the house. Because sometimes if you introduce a deposit, it becomes very difficult for people in that category to access the houses. And number 3, we have made their mortgage interest the lowest. We are actually subsidizing as government at 3%. Then the people in the affordable housing is at 6%. And then the people who can afford what we are calling the market houses is at 9%. So I agree with the World Bank representative here that we have to be sensitive to the market so that we do not, in the process, lock out the people who need the houses the most. One more thing on the subject he raised was how do we raise money? And that's the question you are asking me.
Yeah.
We can stretch taxes so far. We can stretch debt so far. For us in Kenya, we have said we will be very, very careful on matters to do with stretching taxes or stretching debt, because both have consequences.
Yeah.
And therefore, it requires government to think, outside the box and become more innovative. How do we leverage on instruments that can be used for the development of a nation that limits or that reduces our exposure to debt or pushing citizens for taxes? And we have discovered some of them. We have assets that we can deploy in a better way. Let me give you an example. You've just mentioned there about a big stadium we have built. In fact, we are using what we call the sports fund, which is a fund that has been there now, I think, for 10, 15 years. For 10, 15 years, this fund has not achieved much, except do a gate somewhere, do cabro someplace, a small thing somewhere. What we have done is that we have turned that fund into using leveraging on the capital markets through securitization. That fund is now building for us the largest stadium in Nairobi, which is going to host AFCON next year, about $300 million. And another almost $200 million to build another 20 stadia across Kenya. Because sports, Kenya is a sporting nation. Yep. So many people are asking me, but where has this money come from? Have you gone to borrow more money? What have you done? So, innovative financing. Let me give you another example before we go to your question. We are building another huge conference facility. In fact, the next time these good people come to Kenya from August this year, they will be having this session, or whatever session they will be coming, in Bomas of Kenya. We're building another close to 350 million conference facility. Again, we haven't borrowed any money from nobody. We've used our own instruments that have always been there. The tourism levy, which has been there now for 20 years. And if you ask, what has this tourism levy done in 20 years? Nobody can point to any meaningful thing that it has done. Today, we are completing a $350 million conference facility that is going to, using the private sector, we're going to have 1,500 bed, 3 hotels, 5-star, So this is innovation. It's not, we're not adding any more taxes. We're not borrowing any more money. We're just leveraging on the assets that we have. And you have mentioned the National Infrastructure Fund. This is part of the thinking that we have gone into. It is in our manifesto. When we wrote it into the manifesto 3 years ago, many people did not believe it's going to come to be. I did sign the law a month ago. I think today or tomorrow we are advertising for competitively for a board to run it. We have the first $800 million into that fund that came from our IPO privatization of Kenya Pipeline. God willing, we will have another $2 billion into that fund in a short while as we undertake raising money using our mature assets as a nation. And I want to tell this audience, as I tell the people of Kenya, the National Infrastructure Fund, yes, is going to deliver more infrastructure projects to the people of Kenya without pushing them for more taxes or without going into borrowing. And one of them that is going to happen in 2 months' time is the construction of the international airport in Nairobi. The National Infrastructure Fund is going to be the fund that is going to help us, provide our part of our equity. And we don't have to, it's going to be $1.5 billion facility, but we will be putting a fraction of it just to de-risk the process. And then the rest of the money, the private sector will come in through public-private partnership. We're going to work with the concessionaires, and we're going to build the airport using a small fraction of the National Infrastructure Fund. We already have 15 mega dams that are going to benefit from this fund. And I did make a commitment to the people of Kenya that any money that we raise from privatization, that we raise from mature assets of the nation, will be put in this fund. It will not be used to pay salary. It will not be used to pay debt. It is going to be used to develop infrastructure so that we replace one piece of infrastructure with 2, 3, 4, 5 others. That is how we intend to drive this into the future.
Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you were still asking yourself, how is His Excellency the global champion for affordable housing for all, you've heard it from him. It's not just about the political will, it's not just about the bold leadership, but he also knows how to get the resources that's needed to make these ideas a reality. A big round of applause to His Excellency. No, just one more. And now I'll turn to His Excellency Moses Vilakati, African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment. Your Excellency, in your speech, you have emphasized that the Nairobi Declaration must move beyond aspirations to clear commitments and measurable actions. What specific accountability mechanisms will the African Union put in place to ensure that member states actually deliver on affordable housing targets, particularly for low-income and informal settlement populations? Your Excellency.
This is a mammoth task, but it's doable. Thank you, Your Excellency, for this elaborate and eloquent presentation, because it shows that it is doable. Now, here, Your Excellency, there's going to be a declaration termed Nairobi Declaration. As the AUC, we are proud that we'll be part of that journey. And once that declaration is there, it is then taken to the Assembly. I can assure you, Your Excellency, that in February next year, it will be there, so that your colleagues, heads of states and government, can then endorse it for implementation. Because our process always starts from there, that heads of states, governments have seen the document, they've looked at it, they edit it, they delete certain things, they add other things, because that is how it's supposed to be. And then after that, then we unpack it to come up with what are called action plans that obtains from the declaration. So that's why it is very key that we have things that can be actionable for purposes of moving forward. Now, then once we have those action plans, the member states then adopt it, they take it forward, they take some of these ideas that are coming from here and start saying, what is it that we can do? How I wish His Excellency the President would then address these member states to say, this is how I've done it. Yep. This is how I've changed slums. As the champion, I think we'll have to try and see how he comes into that program so that he can be able to elaborate, because hearing from somebody who has done it is like seeing, and I'm sure other countries can then take it from there. So that is then the actionable plans. Once we have those actionable plans, then now they are assimilated or taken over by the member states. So every 2 years, this forum meets. That is where then we come up with what we term biennial reviews. Because now we have to say, this is where we were. Where are you in as far as this process of ensuring that we no longer have slums? We have resilient infrastructure. We have got water for our cities. So that is what the AUC is good at, because the AUC has a convening power which can bring all of these under one roof. But there's one thing. Heads of states including His Excellency, have told us clearly, you cannot force us. You just have to make sure that we take it forward so that each member state can decide. But then with the biennial review, you are then able to measure and assess who is able to move forward, who can do it. But the second aspect is the one related to financing. But it's exciting with what His Excellency is coming up with. Use your own resources. Gone are the days when we'll be looking outside of our borders due to the geopolitics that is obtaining, and I like this model that he has applied, because now we can talk about financing from internal resources because they are there in the pension funds, in whatever, in the financial institutions, in the private sector, to make sure that we can move forward. Those are some of the things that we'll then be able to measure so that we can start seeing who is moving forward and who is not moving forward. We usually then come up with awards so that as the countries exchange ideas, we now look at those who are moving even better, including the cities. Those are some of the things that we now need to put into the review mechanism so that countries are accountable. I present, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Mr. President, I feel like more work is being added to you to continue being a continental voice and champion, and also showcasing Kenya's model to other member states so that they can learn from the great work that you're doing here in the country. Your Excellency, my next question is actually my favorite question. I'll be very honest with you. You have been a strong champion for youth inclusion and consistently advocated for the meaningful participation of young people across your administration. Today we have young people in this room and many joining us virtually. What urban future must we build for our young people, and what role must they play in shaping it?
You know, it's a very important question. You've said it, and I share in your perspective that we have a youthful population in our continent, and of course in Kenya. And whatever it is that we are doing, they must be front and center of it. Housing is about young people. The people coming to work in these housing projects, I can tell you 70% are young people. I told you in January, we had a meeting with graduates from our universities and our TVETs. Young people beaming with, energy and hope. And we brought them into the equation as interns. And I remember when I was talking to them, I was telling them, ordinarily when you go for internship, you pay for it in some areas. But this time round, government is going to pay you to be an intern. And I also told them this internship could actually become an interview, depending on how you display your capabilities. And there were 6,000 graduates from universities, from TVETs. You know, how this is going to turn into a job for you, because we have onboarded how many consulting firms, my friend, consulting firms? Over 350 consulting firms in our housing ecosystem. And these are opportunities for working with these consultants. If you're good, you will finally be absorbed in these consulting firms. So it's about young people and opportunities. Secondly, I've had occasion to go hand over keys to beneficiaries of affordable housing. You can never believe the faces of young graduates, people who've gotten a job a year or two ago, and they get a key to own a home. It's just life-changing, you know? So this is about young people, their careers, their future, being able to lead, to move from, an informal settlement into a home that you will own And we are also making it easier for young people to own these houses. In fact, we will be going back to Parliament to fine-tune the law so that we can reduce the bar for young people to own houses. So this is a whole of society approach. Finally, let me say this as a leader and as a policymaker. It carries a lot of momentum if the people come along, if the people understand. So even as we make the case, I am very happy that it may have been difficult initially, but today I will give you 2 examples. A week ago, we have a big market, possibly the largest market in Kenya, in a place called Gikomba. I think there are close to 200,000 people in that market every week there, selling, buying, and doing stuff. People from different parts of Kenya come to that market to buy for them to go and sell in other markets. And we wanted to transform Gikomba. In fact, the leadership of that market came to see me. And I had a good conversation with them, and we told them, look. And they told me, Mr. President, we are trading in filth. If it rains, you have to put on gumboots. If it rains, nobody shows up because nobody wants to come into a place where the river has overflown, come with sewage, and flooded the trading space. So, first things first, we said we are going to fix the river. Then when I had a conversation with them, I told them we're going to fix the market because this is an informal market. So we did the designs, we worked with the county government, we worked with the leadership of the market, and they told us we're ready to move. We're going to leave this space for you to build for us. Voluntarily. Yeah? When the traders moved, entrepreneurs, people who are looking for money, moved in and said, oh no, we are the owners of this place, We told them, no, we know who the traders are, you get the hell out. So, you cannot believe this. So some people chasing popularity went and had a big meeting to say, oh, the government, why does the government want to remove these people? Blah, blah, blah. The traders themselves told those people, we decided that we are going to move because we want a modern market to be built for us. And by the way, we're going to build that market in a record 6 months.
Wow.
We will have a 3-floor market in that space. And those traders believe us because we have done it elsewhere. They have seen us build markets. And they believe us because we are redeeming them from filth and dirt and sewer. But those fellows who went there to try and tell them not to move, they don't even buy anything from that Gikomba. They go to Yaya Center. When they finish the meeting, they will not go and buy nothing from there. They will go to Yaya Center, they will go to Sarit Center, they will go to the modern markets, but they want these people to continue trading in filth. How stupid can that be? So, that's just an example of how citizens can be part of the transformation. They are the ones saying, no, we want the market built. We are the traders here, we are moving out to give room for government to do the market for us. I'll give you another example. Yesterday, in Nairobi, in Kibra, citizens, we did the first phase of the first 4,000 housing units. We're now doing another 15,000 units, and citizens have to move to give room for us to build for them. Citizens were moving themselves. In fact, we had an accident yesterday. We lost 4 people because in the process of them pulling down their own, structures, there was an accident. But what encouraged me is that the people themselves are pulling down the informal structures to live, so that to give room for us to build for them houses. In the past, they would be resisting that we do not want to move. That is how, when citizens come on board, things become even easier. And this time around, those fellows who went, the politicians who tried to go there, they didn't go to Kibera because they now realized that the conversation has changed, that the people now know what they want, and they will not entertain any cheap stories. I would encourage us, as we drive this, it is very important that we onboard citizens so that they can help us make the difficult decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, please give a big round of applause to His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and all our additional speakers. Africa does not lack ideas. Africa does not lack ambition. What we must now confront is delivery. Housing is not a sector. It is a system through which we build our economies and our future. If we get housing right, we unlock jobs, productivity, and dignity. We have heard today from leaders who are not only advancing this agenda through policy and political will, but also through financing and implementation. And while progress is being made, there's still much work to be done here in Kenya and across the continent. I would like to close with a powerful message delivered a few months ago by Your Excellency at the new Mukuru Housing Estate handover ceremony, and I quote, "Today, we are giving you keys, not just to open a door, not just to open a house, but to open a home, to welcome you into dignity, into a different life." And that is the commitment I made to the people of Kenya. End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what affordable housing is about. At its core, dignity for all. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to His Excellency, President William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, for his bold and transformative leadership and for walking the talk when it comes to affordable housing for all. Asante sana, Mr. President. God